It's kind of like on Seinfeld, the stop short.
Yeah. Whoa. What's...
You never heard of the stop short?
No.
It's like you unnecessarily pump the brakes so you can reach across and
touch the boobs.
Put your hand on their chest. Hey guys, welcome back. Again, for the second episode in a row, I forgot our little friend, Topo Chico. And again, that's Chico without an N.
It's common spelling,
which makes sense. It's a fantastic mineral water with a twist of grapefruit, which you could never ever do grapefruit in your own mineral water by yourself. It's
impossible.
Literally, yeah. Thank you.
You can't.
It's science. People have dedicated their careers to this. But if you must, which you do, know the sound of refreshment, take a listen, motherfuckers. Oh, Jesus, it's delicious.
It sounds delicious.
And so refreshing. God.
Sounds refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Topo Chico, how do you do it and stay so modest? That's what I want to know.
I know. I've never even heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't brag much.
The, ding.
You know what? I found someone that enjoys it just as much as you do.
No.
Really?
Yes.
Who?
I can't think of his name at the moment, but he's an Instagram guy, Fit Man Cook. I think it's Kevin something, but I started following him, and every now and then I'll see him with his plate, and there's a bottle of Topo Chico there.
I've had a few listeners respond on some posts and say that they drink it when they listen to our podcast, which I think is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's fantastic, guys. Let me tell you, I'm basically like a sommelier of mineral waters
At this point in the year.
And it's because it's been forced upon me. But it's pretty fucking good. Guys, is what I'm doing is I keep on trying to steer away from the fact that I've got to get into this book. What we're talking about today is a book, Man Uncivilized, and it was just to give you a little backstory. I had never heard of Traver Boehm. I have never heard of the Man Uncivilized movement prior to my brother Tony Moon coming up and visiting, and Tony had a friend that knew Traver and suggested this book to him. And Tony, like a lot of us did, like I did later, excuse me, paid it forward to me, and I picked it up and didn't put it down for a long time. Namely because it addressed a ton of shit that I've wrestled with during my life, and I'm sure a ton of other men have, and that's why Traver wrote it, to work through those things, because a lot of traditional methods of counseling or interacting with people or something like that don't specifically address some male issues, and man, if there's anything that does, this book is it. So Tony passed that on to me, and I got into it, and then I got some copies for my friends. I got a copy for Luke and Chris, and we've got a phenomenal, really close friendship and stuff like that. And they read it, and we talked about it, and we thought it would be a great idea to do an episode on it. So here we are. And It's if you want to see, I was kind of laughing to myself. Like, if you ever want to see like an uncomfortable situation, put three guys in a room and make them talk about intimacy. Like, it's so it's there's just a lot of like funny ways and things, because where the humor in that comes from, it's like a lot of stereotypes. It's based in reality. Not every stereotype, but in as far as like men talking about things like, masculinity, intimacy, shame, sex. We definitely talk about sex, and
but not
probably
not in the right way.
But maybe not seriously.
Yeah, and they're kind of like guys talking about sex is sort of like fishing stories, in my opinion. Like, it's always like the stories we tell are always way better than the actual,
or they're way worse, but they're not accurate.
Right.
They're not
accurate. And
I've
I've got some hilarious sex stories and other stories that
all the people you've had sex with.
Yes, in quotes.
People.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish you guys were there for that, so you would know it. So you guys would know the joke. But the best way to kind of, I guess, get into Traver's book would we were just talking about it on the break, because I didn't know how to really explain it, and I didn't want to, as out of respect for Traver, I didn't want to fuck up how he spells out his vision, because that would be a disservice to him. So I'm just going to read you sort of the prologue, if you will, and we'll go from there. So to begin, in Western society, being a slave is a choice. Now you know. So the choice is yours to continue to make, or not. Here's the unfiltered truth. You don't have to do a goddamn thing this book tells you to do. Nothing. And you don't have to do a goddamn thing I tell you. You can continue to ride the civilized wave of the status quo, play the safe game, and toe society's company line. Slave nor the imaginary bars he finds comfort in hiding behind. This is not a book for all men, nor is it a movement for all men. All men may be equal, but we're certainly not all created equally, nor do we have the capacity to walk the earth in the same manner. Many of you will stay civilized because it's easy, it's safe, and it's a path of least effort. Divorce, addiction, and isolation will welcome you with open arms, as obesity, impotence, and crippling dissatisfaction become your new normal. Or you can wake up right now. You can heed the call, the one you've been trying to outrun at every turn. You can stop running, turn around, and claim your freedom, claim your full power, and dive into living the life you were meant to as a confident man, an unapologetic man, an uncivilized man. Welcome to your evolution. Welcome to your personal revolution. So that's quite a fucking intro.
It is.
And it's, man, there's so many places to start that you could start with that. I really have the
You didn't let the Topo Chico.
I think the 3 Topo Chicos I had before this. Woo, they're really catching up to me. I guess sort of in a weird way, it's kind of cool how we were led into this. because we had talked about doing an episode on this. Obviously, I think the goal, in getting us all reading this at the same time, was to eventually do an episode on it. And I was kind of laughing to myself because it was when we did that group message we did the other day. Right, it was kind of late at night. I was sitting at home and I was like, "Hey guys, what do you think about this idea where we all like take something that's really cool to us and we each like do an episode about it and stuff like that?" And like we're all kind of like, I'm not sure about that. And we end up sort of doing that by settling on this, which I think was what you threw out there. You're like, yeah, I'd be cool with doing that Man Uncivilized deal. And I was thinking about, like, I was kind of like sad for a second at first because like, oh, they didn't like my idea. And then, but then I'm like, well, we're kind of accomplishing the same thing by doing this.
Yeah.
And, man, I know I have a lot of personal stories, personal experiences that, range from, hilarity to really fucking depressing. They go into a lot of this book, and like I said, I'm not sure where to start. Maybe we can start on masculinity, or what do you guys think?
I need to start with a disclaimer.
Okay.
I'm going to sound like I disagree with a lot of this book, and I don't. It's just going to sound like that. That's the disclaimer.
Okay. All right.
That's the whole disclaimer.
Oh, that was it. Oh, I thought you was about to read something.
No. That's okay.
I thought too. I was like,
nope. That's it. That's the entire. Well,
that's the whole point, right? Three different men, three different lifestyles, three different point of views. You know, we're not going to agree on everything that came out of this book,
not
because
even close.
we're different. So isn't that the point, to get the back and forth?
And that is the point. That's why I don't feel bad about it, because what he says at the end of the book too, as well as what he said at the beginning.
Which you made a point about.
What you just read is what he says at the beginning. He says the exact same thing at the end, but he says it in a little, maybe a little. It's phrased differently.
Okay.
But he basically says, he says everything you need to start your journey is contained in these pages behind this one. Read them, digest them, challenge them, and make them yours. Mold them to your life, your relationship, and to your unique human experience, or ignore them completely. They're yours to do with now as you please, which is what he said at the beginning, but he said it in a different way, maybe a little less aggressive at the end of the book. And so I don't feel bad about, it would be absurd to say like, oh, this book, everything in this entire book is going to apply to every man in the...
Right.
Yeah, that'd be stupid. So I'm going to sound like I disagree with a lot of it, or it doesn't apply to me. Well, one of those.
It probably wouldn't, just because your idea growing up with masculinity might be different than his.
Well,
that's
the thing. Like, so you want to start with the Marlboro Man, because that was the first thing. Like, so I read this book and he's talking about the Marlboro Man and how like terrible it was. But so I had two grandpas that fought in World War II, and somehow they made it. No idea how. And then Aaron's grandpa, he freaking made it too. Like, Marlboro men that were, they went and did some crazy ass shit, but then came back and they didn't go nuts. They didn't go soft. They didn't go crazy. They just freaking somehow held their shit together and raised a family and led a normal life somehow with no help. There was no PTSD awareness back then, nothing.
No.
So the Marlboro Man section, which is like one of the first ones that we're talking about, paradigm shift.
So I guess since we're on that, are you in a spot where you can kind of sort of maybe explain what the Marlboro Man paradigm?
If
okay.
Well, I guess the Marlboro Man is sort of an older reference now, isn't it?
Yeah. There's because they're.
I'm so old.
I think after our generation, people
shut up. Read the paradigm.
New laws had come in to enact where you couldn't sensationalize things that killed you.
Yeah.
I guess
so.
think it's probably a way to put it.
Sure.
Okay.
Except for prescribed drugs.
Food.
That's totally fine.
No, except for food. No,
Food
except
and
for
prescribed drugs. That's totally fine.
You can't have the Marlboro Man, but fucking Tony the Tiger is hanging on.
Yeah.
So this is,
and we can have you pound fucking Big Macs like you're doing that stuff.
Chester Cheater is still around, buddy.
So all right, Luke.
the Marlboro Man would be the. If you're not familiar with the Marlboro Man, my
He's
God,
a tough guy.
we have younger users.
No,
younger
he's a
listeners
tough guy. He's
yeah,
the man's man.
Yeah,
he was always a man, no matter
like
what.
yeah, like if you're listening and like maybe you're younger than 35. Kind of when we talk about Marlboro, obviously a huge tobacco company. Used to have a kind of their big advertising spokesperson was this. He was the quintessential.
He was a cowboy.
Yeah, a quintessential man. He was a cowboy, very a handsome dude. Had like the great fitting jeans, like the chaps. He was on a horse. He was out in the wilderness.
He was always riding a horse.
Yeah,
and smoking a cigarette.
And it was that a lot of us that grew up in that era. That necessarily wasn't what we wanted to emulate, but we wanted to show sort of masculinity in that same sort of way.
It was really effective
if
advertising.
that makes sense. It was. Because obviously it was. It's something
everybody wanted to be Clint Eastwood.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's something we remember. Guy. It was probably the most effective advertising is stuff that we remember 20 years later.
To be honest, way better than Joe Camel. I never understood that one.
Yeah,
well,
I'm diverse. No, never
yeah,
mind. Keep going.
But no, I mean the whole thing behind he didn't show weakness. He didn't show fear. He didn't show emotions. Nothing bothered him. He was a man's man. Mm-hmm. That was the idea behind the Marlboro. Yeah. So
in this book, because I'm still under the impression that this book is, as if you're going to write a book about an entire generation of men, you're going to make broad, sweeping statements.
The book is only how many
full
pages
of generalities,
long.
Right? So,
you've got to make some bold decisions.
My great-grandfather was a Marlboro Man. I'll put that out there.
Mm-hmm. I believe he was.
Vernon Clemens was the motherfucking Marlboro Man.
I believe that.
I dig that name.
Vernon Clemens?
The shit.
Yeah.
If I have a kid, I'm going to name him Vernon Clemens.
King will be
so thrilled. Last name. I don't even care if it's a last name that has any connection to my family line.
But I like reading that book, and I can remember my great-grandfather. Like, he died when I was young, but there's still things I remember. Smells trigger memories, things like that. There's things I can remember about this man. And reading this book, it was like, shit. Yeah. And then
you can start to see parallels.
Yeah. And then you get to the other side of it. We'll get there later, but as I'm growing up and I see these guys and I'm like, are you these are the kind of guys that used to date my mom, and it's like, man, the fuck up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, so when I started reading this book, and it was like, man, I never had a chance.
Yeah. And
so after, like, I think once I read all of it, I didn't disagree with it. The broad sweeping statements are so we can compare, in my mind, the Marlboro Man generation to the whatever we have now generation.
So you're saying your grandfather's fault, right?
Yeah, both of them. Yeah.
Both of them. And you remember them as something totally different than what the book portrayed that generation to.
Well, the negative part, yeah, absolutely. Like, they definitely...
It's a tough comparison, because it's sort of like comparing, like in sports, when they compare, like Jim Brown to fucking running backs now.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I think you run into a similar problem when you compare generations.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the facilities and the ability to deal with things hasn't changed, but the ways, the outlets, the fallbacks, and maybe not to be controversial, but I think the excuses didn't exist.
Well, I think
And that's a bold, and I know that's a bold statement.
I think more than anything, like, I mean, this is a broad generalization of the time.
Well, and
Of the time and the people at the time. Not necessarily saying your folks were like that just because, I mean, come on, we already talked about it. Homeschooled.
Right.
You know, it's like you come from a different stock
Yeah, so
altogether.
what in particular?
I think what he did is he bookended the for the farthest negative of the Marlboro Man
to the farthest negative
and to the farthest negative of the nice guy.
Yeah.
And then said, this is how you land in the middle.
And you kind of have to sort of set paradigms.
Right. And once I figured that out, once I read the whole book and was like, oh, that's what he's doing. He's not saying the entire Marlboro Man generation was like this.
No.
Because some dudes somehow managed to fucking do it. And I have no idea how.
So some did. A lot didn't though.
And they came home and they got a normal job and they went to work and they freaking either didn't become alcoholics or kicked it later.
But you know what too? Like, it wasn't just the strength of those men, it was the strength of the families too. Because the one thing that wasn't as prevalent then as, you know, now, and that's divorce. You know, they decided we're going to fight for this. You know, we're a family. We're going to fight for this family. We're going to see this through. Whereas now it's like, you know what? You ate my cinnamon toast crunch. I'm out.
And that's
this shit.
But Chris, you bring up an excellent point in kind of just listening to what Luke was saying and what you just brought up. I think and I don't know if problem is the right word, but and of course I can only relate to my own experience. Like I would, you probably can too, just to some extent, because you were raised by a single mom. Also, Chris, just you would, like I had very quote manly, masculine uncles that were a lot of my male role models growing up, and you would see the great things, you would see the things that you attributed to, for lack of a better description, being a man, but you wouldn't, to kind of touch on like the divorce thing, you saw the good stuff, but you never saw the conflict that maybe that caused with their partner, because that in not every case, but a lot of that stuff might have led to being closed off, like not communicating what you're really feeling, because and Traver talks about that and a lot of that emanated from the fact that for a long time men didn't even know they had, one, the ability, and two, probably the opportunity.
I would say more so the right
to show, or the right to even
the right to be sensitive, the right to show weakness, the right
to express oneself, discomfort, displeasure.
And I'm Chris Rock, great comedian, and he was talking about the different the paradigms between parents. You know, the mother, the father, this, that. And it's like, oh, what happens Mother's Day? You know, Mother's Day come around, you get her the flowers, you get her the presents, you do this, you do that. You know, they got songs about moms. It's everything sweet. It's like, and what did Daddy get? He got the big piece of chicken. You know, it's like,
and another shitty tie on Father's Day. Like it's
So I mean, you expected to show mom's affection and love and all this and that other, and dad was supposed to be the strong. You know, he's supposed to be the rock. He didn't need all of that stuff because his job was to make sure the family was okay.
Buying shit for my dad was so hard. What do you want? Nothing. And I was like, how do you want nothing? There's so many toys in the world.
And that,
and now that I'm 34, Aaron's like, what do you want for your birthday? I'm like, nothing.
Look at it. See, Marlboro Man.
I know, and I can't help it. And it's out of laziness. I'll have you know, it's out of sheer laziness on my part.
Well, it's
like my like not adherence. My propensity to stoicism is complete laziness. Just so you both know, and all of our listeners,
and that's kind of a traditionally a very masculine trait, being stoic.
Oh, I thought I meant being lazy.
No.
Because women all over were like, yeah, fuck those lazy men. And then it was like, oh, stoic. No.
You
Yeah.
just lost half the viewership.
You ruined it.
No. And so I guess if I could categorize what we're talking about, we're kind of touching on masculinity.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And the perception of what it means to be masculine.
At the beginning, what you read, they're talking about the difference between civilized and uncivilized man. It breaks down to masculinity, does it not? Mm-hmm. Okay, so go ahead, please continue.
So I guess when we start bringing up terms and stuff like that, when we bring up a word like masculinity in where we are now in time, there's connotations that come along with that. And like one of the top of mind awareness things that might be the first thing to shoot into your mind, or one of the first, is because it has been prevalent, not so much now as it was like maybe a few years ago, but toxic masculinity, that word.
That was big for a while.
So we'll touch on that as well. And there's as not just men, but as human beings, and entities capable of empathy, I think we can all step back and because at first, as a man, when you hear that masculinity is toxic, there's some things that pop into your head, and some ways you want to react or counter that statement with. But that kind of in and of itself is one of the things I was taking notes of in kind of getting ready for this podcast would be that because as I've always said in instances when we've done shows before, I think to have a broad way of thinking and not necessarily compromise your beliefs, but if somebody says something before you try to counter them or tell them they're wrong, you've got to sort of step back and try to make an attempt to see life through their lens and realize that the possibility that they could be right exists. I think that's fair. It's not reciprocated very often, but at the end of the day, we can control that, right? We can do it. And I've said a lot before from Ram Dass's teachings, you don't do something without expecting anything in return. You just do it because you believe it's the right thing.
Right.
And so you can give someone that courtesy, whether or not they pay you that courtesy back is out of your control. And and that's a big message that Traver hits on in here, is what's in your control, what's out of your control.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Which I love that part.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question for you before we get too deep into the conversation, because I said, 3 different point of views. Was there anything in the book? I'll start with Luke because I'm sure you have a lot. But was there anything in the book, Luke, that spoke to you as a man? That said, "Well, I wasn't doing this," or "No, I should be doing this more," or anything like that? Was there something in there that
I've reached no conclusions, and I've read this thing multiple times. Or parts of it multiple times, and for 2 or 3 months now, and I'm still maybe it's because I haven't gotten to try a lot of it out yet, and some of it I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll try that. It's an amazing book. I love every page, whether I agree with it or not. It's super well written. I don't know if you guys have seen the layout, but the layout's dope. I'm really. Dude, I loved all of it. His page about his little bit on the actual, like, where he talks about toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
The toxic masculinity myth was just phenomenal, and was just really phenomenal, actually.
Okay.
But I loved all of it.
Yeah, but
I haven't made a lot of it did. I still think about it like, I wonder, like the Marlboro Man thing. Like, I can sit there and go, after I read it, I was like, you know what? Yeah, that's probably true. And then I was like, but is it bad for a man to not have as much emotion as a woman? Like, or is it bad for a man not to have much emotion at all? Because, like, we all know emotion. A lot of emotions are hormones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of emotions you have no control over. It's just what your hormones do. So is it bad? Like, maybe that's
but
just naturally
the problem
what
with
you
that
are.
is that other paradigm.
Right, and so then there's the other half of the paradigm that's like, well,
and
maybe
the reason,
you can be too emotional.
But the reason that other paradigm came along is because the Marlboro Man was too stoic. He was too tough. He was too quiet, too non-emotional, and women didn't want that. They
didn't want it anymore.
Yeah, and so then the sensitive guy showed up.
Right.
And then he was all into his feelings and your feelings and hugging and emotions and
talking for a
how
long time.
How are you doing today? And then it turned out that...
And a lot of them were wolves in sheep's clothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he says that on there. Dude, I loved this book.
Well, what's it? There was another comedian who was like, talking about being the friend with the shoulder to cry on.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's
he's like, you
trying to fuck your girlfriend.
Yeah, he's like, you're gonna piss her off, and she's gonna come over here, and I think it was Martin.
Yep.
But what about you? Was there anything?
Jesus.
And that's why I wanted to come to you next.
Everything, and not to just because you guys know me, I've got to finish a thought before I can
start the next one.
And it goes along with a lot of things, and like the Marlboro Man thing, and we I brought it up. Luke touched on it briefly. The sort of debunking, and I use the word debunk here's a counter I have to Traver. And Traver, if you listen, I love your book. I love it. Here's a counter I have. The notion of being toxically masculine, it may be right or wrong. And as you stated, the whole premise of that is people that are trying to make masculinity into something that was never meant to be. But as men, sort of kind of also touching on where I felt like you went on the Me Too movement, there's an iffy point of friction where if a woman tells me her experience, and I know we've joked about it on here before, but like personal truths versus objective truths, or non-objective truths. If as a man, a woman tells me her personal truth and experience, if I tell her she's wrong, then that in essence is kind of the whole notion of what's attaching toxicity to masculinity. Like, who am I to tell a woman that her experience is wrong?
Do you remember what page you're talking about? Because I actually don't.
I'm just talking about the notion of toxic masculinity, kind of.
Oh, right. So
debunking in particular.
Can we?
So I'm just kind of setting the framework of.
Okay.
Not that, like, I'm not saying in any way, shape they're right or wrong, but I'm saying as a man, I have a responsibility to step back, and just like in the Me Too movement, if a woman says she was sexually assaulted and she tells me her story and I say that that's bullshit or something like that, or she tells me her what she perceived to be an experience of quote, toxic masculinity. And I attempt to debunk that. That's kind of playing right into that myth.
Who said you need to?
I'm just saying in general. That's where these things come from.
No, I get that, but what is the point of you trying to do it? And I get that's where a lot of this stems from. What is the point of trying to debunk that in the first place?
It's in the book.
Trying to debunk
of debunking toxic masculinity.
Not so much.
Are you? I think I'm on the right page.
It's a specific chapter, I believe.
It's chapter 54.
Is it actually telling people to tell others that their experiences was wrong, or is it more so accepting the fact that this is an issue,
but there's a matter
but you can either deal with it or you can become a civil. I thought the way I read it was that either you're the uncivilized man that understands that this is an issue. People are going to believe Me Too movement, toxic masculinity, all this is going to be a thing. And you could take the easy way out and be a civilized man and just go along with all of this. Or you can fight for, what you believe in and
I'm
understand
saying
that this is going to be issue. Not so much as trying to debunk what's happening to other people, just knowing that you taking a stand for what you believe in is going to put you in the crosshairs for whatever may come along.
And as what I'm saying is specifically the way to go about fighting for what you believe in is sitting down with somebody or reaching out to a group that is saying something is toxically masculine.
Not really.
And being...
I don't believe that. Because
why?
Because way too many people...
In what instance has communication made stuff worse?
Really?
Yes. I mean, it's an honest question.
In the instance where you think you're going to a conversation and it's turning into a fucking trap. That's the instance that communication
But
if
you're not getting to where you want to go, is it their stupidity or stubbornness, or is it your lack of creativity?
I think it's their stupidity and stubbornness.
I disagree.
I think we need to go into a debate style format where only one person talks at a time.
Okay,
so you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
No, I was just trying to understand because
I'll reiterate Tony Robbins' adage: if you're creative enough, fun enough, and playful enough, you can get through to anyone.
But the problem is I'm not creative. I'm not fun. And what was that other one?
But those are limitations you're putting on yourself.
Wait, what was that other one? What was the other one? Just give me the last.
Creative, playful, and fun.
Motherfucker, do I look playful?
No.
Okay then.
But something about you attracted me, so I wanted to become your friend.
He's definitely not fun.
Yeah, thank you. But no, I'm just saying, like, all right, so we've had this conversation before,
right,
that conversations turn into arguments because the loudest voice believes that they're going to win. And people who don't want to give up their position, who don't want to give up their idea that they're right, they're not going to. You might get them to concede a couple of points, but at the end of the day, they're still going to believe that their side is right and what they have is right.
Right, but you're not.
But
if you're not.
And also, this is what I'm taking from the whole uncivilized man attitude is that I don't have to convince you. This is who I am. I don't have to convince you whether or not I'm right or wrong. I'm going to still be this person.
But that's going to ensure that a dividing line always exists.
And so if didn't we just have a conversation about some NASCAR drivers dropping the N-word? There's going to always be a dividing line.
I know. But if you can, I'm saying, Chris, if you can take, and I'm not saying I do this all the time. I'm not saying that at all. But if the possibility exists for you to extend an olive branch, whether that person accepts it or not.
Okay. What do you have
to lose?
So accept it or not, but at the end of the day, are you going to change the type of person you are because of it?
You're not trying to change it. It's like if a wife marries a guy expecting that he's going to change. Because you're not trying to change him.
That's never happened, huh?
Exactly. I know, and that's why I'm making that correlation. That
no, you're not. No, that's what I'm saying. You're not trying to change them, but you're not going to change yourself at the same time, right?
Yeah, the whole point is just to open up maybe another avenue or a thought that didn't exist before.
And the whole thing was being uncompromised. Being uncompromised, being unapologetic. That's what he's talking about when it comes to the whole toxic masculine, because they're trying to make you change your way of thinking and the way you do things because it's toxic. You being a man and you having this attitude is wrong. Just like what was the term that came out not too long ago when this all started? Mansplaining.
Oh, mansplaining, yes.
Because the way you're doing that is wrong, and you need to change that, or you need to be more this way. And it's like, and I get some things true, maybe, whatever. But me as a, this is the way I decided that I'm gonna be a man, and you come along and say, what is it? Oh, my favorite one at work. Oh, you should smile more. Bitch, I don't want to smile.
Now I'm confused because I thought you were making an argument for women because women hate that shit.
Yeah.
Men get it too, apparently.
No, I get that.
No one gives a shit if men get it, though.
You should smile more. For what?
Yeah, I'll get it occasionally when I'm deep in thought or spaced out. I revert to some resting bitch face.
I do that all the time.
And I have a natural one, but it's like if I'm not smiling, apparently I'm plotting on somebody that I'm in the vicinity of, But either way, it's just the whole, and that's where that comes, like, so, Mr. Ovens, you wear these bracelets and you got all these muscles and you got your pirate jewelry on. And I decided that pirate jewelry, that's a little bit too, toxic.
A little too racy, a little too in your face.
Yeah,
and I've heard stuff like that. I've heard, do you think your tattoos supporting your Jewish heritage might be offensive to someone that's Muslim? I've heard stuff like that.
Yeah.
Are you shitting me?
And by people that would surprise you. And,
no shit.
Yeah. And it's, so I know where they're coming from. At first blush, I was extremely irritated, and I was like, how could you even think of something like that? But when you sit and think about it, you're like, okay, yeah, I could see it. It's not going to make me take them off.
I was about to say, are you ready to compromise who you are
No, but compromising and having empathy are two very different things.
But it doesn't say don't be empathetic. It's just saying don't compromise who you are. That was the whole point. Civilized, easy. Uncivilized is going to be hard. It's going to be rough. You're going to have hurdles. You're going to have people stepping in front of you. Choose. Yeah. And that's what he was saying. That's why so many people choose civilized, because you can be lazy. You can sit back. You can say, well, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
So
and I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. I'm just also trying to look at it from a different point of view, and also there's some, and each one of our individual worldviews is going to play into how we see this.
And that's the whole point between the three of us, because like you said, Luke was raised by his mom and his dad. We were raised both by single moms.
And because of that, and having my mother and my sister-in-law and my half sisters Caitlin and Kieran is both being really fucking strong female personalities, that it's like, and I give a disclaimer, to anyone that's listening, sort of my default mechanism is to not to pander to any one of them in any way, shape, or form, but to definitely take however they're thinking about something and spend a lot of time trying to understand how they got to that conclusion. And because as being raised by a single mom, having a lot of really powerful women in the family, aunts and uncle, aunts included, that's part of my default mechanism is to be like, not necessarily to be initially go to like, it's as a man, I should feel guilty or wrong, but to give strong consideration to whatever's causing this emotional response.
Right.
And which I don't think is unhealthy.
No, I don't think. No,
I
wasn't saying that.
And I know you weren't. And
Okay.
I'm not trying. And guys that are listening, and that's not. If you knew me and Chris, you'd know this isn't like us like.
Oh, we're not arguing.
This is normal
Yeah,
conversation.
And it's I guess maybe I'm just the filter that I live life through, or the lens that I see shit through.
I think you're ultra sensitive to other people's point of view. You're very empathetic.
I am,
and which I can respect. Mm-hmm. But I think we've had this conversation before too. I can show empathy to others, like I can see their point of view, things like that. Mm-hmm. But we, again, coming from two different backgrounds, where I grew up, mm-hmm. you weren't allowed to show weakness. It's just you didn't.
It wasn't an option.
No. Yeah. So everything was a pushback. Even mm-hmm. if you were completely wrong, everything was a pushback. So that's why I can push back against you right now. I don't mean anything about it. It's just
And there was a lot of that growing up. There was sort of the opposite of that growing up for me. There was a lot of nurturing. There was a lot of there was a lot of times, like my mom was angry for a long time, and I absorbed a lot of men are pieces of shit, stuff like that for a long time, and I internalized that, and for a period of time, like became a piece of shit to women, but also at the same time that sort of nurturing and not having to fight for everything was what led me into a lot of the different routes I took, like to throw myself into like musical theater or football, or joining the army on a whim, like finding challenges.
I have to ask you. Just, I don't want to do it, but I have to ask you.
Yes.
Were you the sensitive guy?
No.
At some point, okay. Thank you.
Really?
No.
No,
Okay.
I was.
No,
Really? You
were
the
dude. Oh, I was a big baby.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, believe it or not.
No,
I was a baby. I was a mama's boy, definitely, but I was never the sensitive guy.
I always felt like those guys were betraying us.
Okay.
As men, and it's and that's like I said, that's a like now I know that's a simple-minded thing.
All right.
But I was also, during a good decade and a half, I was a real piece of shit. As far as like I was the guy that I hated dating women who had previously dated guys like me, because now it's like, because now it's like you're picking up the fucking mess that this fucking asshole created, and I was that asshole.
And you were allowed to make a mess of your own.
This is called karma.
But anyway, not to get too far out. I think
no, can I?
Still kind of
I think I have an opinion.
Well, we started with the Marlboro Man. Now we're on the sensitive guy.
Oh wait, no, we have to go back to toxic masculinity.
Let's go back. Go back. No,
okay.
Let's go back. Yeah.
So I agree with both of you. I also disagree with both of you.
And see the compromising.
No, this is this is me.
You are the sensitive one, huh?
Oh, dude, you have no idea. I'll tell you stories.
What's neutral? Is it Sweden?
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Okay.
So
it's kind of right in the middle. It's perfect.
First of all, so in this chapter 54, the one you guys are talking about, it's on page 284 for our listeners who have the book. Yes, he's absolutely right. The word toxic masculinity is absolutely overused to describe shit that isn't actually toxic masculinity. It'd be fucked up if anybody did it. Mm-hmm. But we're like, oh, we don't want to blame this. We'll blame toxic masculinity because we hate masculinity. For some reason in this culture we do. Mm-hmm. Absolutely disagree with this sentence. Masculinity isn't toxic, period. And they says period. No, everything's toxic. Like everything. You can have toxic femininity.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, you can.
You better watch your mouth.
I know, right? This is fucking nuts. You can have toxic everything.
It was nice having the show with the two.
I know, man. It's over now.
This is it.
But I agree. I agree with what he's saying. In that, yes, they abuse toxic masculinity as a term to describe shit. But to say masculinity can never be toxic.
No, I don't think he's saying it can never be. It's just it is not.
Well,
masculinity is not toxic, period. But it can be. depending on who. Just like religion isn't bad.
So if you're going to say that, you can't say masculinity isn't toxic. Period. If you're going to say that, you can say masculinity in its appropriate amount and form is not toxic.
So everyone that has that point of view has the right to warp that point of view. This is.
Hey, I've got maybe a solution.
Drink break.
Let's try to define our terms. What is
That's
masculinity?
a great idea. Well, so that's the thing, right?
And not necessarily in the book, but each one of our, like, if you took a piece of paper and you wrote down
what makes you a man,
what is masculinity to me?
So the funny thing about that assessment,
it's really fluid.
It is.
Well, it's super fluid, and that's why.
And
that's part of the reason why, like, saying masculinity isn't toxic without defining it in the previous sentence is a little bit risky. Mm-hmm. So he says, like later, he says, have you noticed if you ask someone to clearly define toxic masculinity, you get a lot of different answers? Right. Well, the thing is, if you ask somebody to define masculinity, you get a lot of different answers. Because no one knows what the fuck it means. Okay, other than it means, to most people, it means the traditional version of masculinity, which is stoicism, smoke cigarettes, drink straight whiskey, which is why we're doing this today.
And it's delicious.
It is delicious. Don't show your feelings. Be super strong. That's masculinity. Well, if you think that can't go too far and become toxic, I think you're crazy.
Okay, how about this? Are you toxic?
Well, I try not to be. If I went absolutely far left, yes, I would be toxic, hardcore. And
no,
I could have all
you
this...
right now.
Right.
You know what? I'm gonna answer it for you. I'm gonna answer it for you.
Wife.
I'm gonna answer it for you.
I don't know.
No, you weren't, because if you were toxic, we wouldn't be friends.
Because I keep that shit in check, but I don't keep it in check with femininity. I keep it in check with, like, well, I'm masculine, but if I go too far left, it's gonna be bad.
There's also a chapter in the book, I can't remember exactly right now, where he was talking about this group of men, probably the most dangerous men in the world. They could kill anybody, but they don't.
Who are they?
I like black belts in jiu-jitsu and like
I know what you're talking. When he was a personal bodyguard, it's like they would have conversations about all this crazy shit that they did.
It's like it's like being a danger versus being dangerous.
Yes,
or something.
Thank you.
And
it's like that defines, like you were saying, you could be a lot of stuff. I could be a lot of stuff. I mean.
That's a good, like, that's I don't think that's maybe to better understand each other's, like, let's just talk about each one of us what we each individually think masculinity is. That's gonna be hard just because. Are you ready for this? Well, it's not gonna be hard because it's gonna be what you think. Luke will talk about what he thinks. I'll talk about what I think.
Let me tell you.
And we'll make an agreement not to disagree with each other because
let me tell you a story.
That would be fucking toxic in itself.
No, let me tell you a story, right? Mm-hmm. Growing up, it was just me and my mom.
Yeah.
And my mother, whenever I did something bad and she would want me punished, she had this friend from our church who was basically, what do they call them in baseball? Pinch hitters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was basically her pinch hitter.
Yeah.
So whenever she was very upset with me and very emotional and did not want to have to discipline me because she felt she would hurt me, she would send me down to this man's house who wasn't angry with me.
Yeah.
Who would still take a belt and whoop my ass with just the straightest face. Do you know what that does to a kid? But
I have no idea what that does to a kid.
Oh, yeah. But this man was Sylvester Lindsay. Love you. One of the smoothest people you'll ever meet. This man had a suit, a belt for every suit, a shirt for every suit, and a hat. He never left his house without a hat on that matched everything.
A belt for every ass he fucking whooped too?
Yeah.
No shit.
Oh, he had a special one. Insane.
Yeah.
But, super close with his family. My mom was super close. But, so this man, married, kid, did everything that a man is supposed to do, take care of his family, whoop my ass every now and then when my mom needed the help. He was an elder in our church, and he's someone I really looked up. He was my father figure.
Yeah.
He would take me fishing and, whatever else, spend time with me. On top of everything else he had to do for his family. Like, this is something I never realized until later down the road, that this man made time to steer me in the direction that my mother needed help, steering me in that she couldn't do really because she was a female trying to raise, a man. So it's like, it's not always the easiest for a woman to try to raise a man to be a good man, you know? But like when I think of masculinity, when I think of smooth, like this is my role model. Sylvester Lindsay, he is masculinity to me. And did he ever show me emotion? Not really, but I can't say what he did with his wife and whatnot. But that whole stoic, show strength, like never let him see you bleed. Never let him see you cry. That's what I got from him. So to me, okay, yeah, that's what I grew up thinking masculinity was.
And I would agree with that. My idea of masculinity is not a blubbering idiot that cries at every turn, that's overly emotional and stuff like that. I think that's just as annoying as anybody that does that. It's masculinity has been incredibly fluid to me, and a lot of it's because of the experiences I've had. There weren't a lot of the pinch hitters, as you use the phrase that Mom passed off to, so she did a lot of that herself. And so you look for, you got to kind of go on an adventure and sort of find out what masculinity is, and there's a lot of trial and error along that road, because obviously some stuff that a lot of shit I've done in my life that I thought was masculine, kind of, I don't know, boiled down to some forms of insecurity and lack of vulnerability.
But do you think it was toxic masculinity more so?
It was probably, well, and that's the point that Traver makes. It was toxic to myself,
right? And
I expressed that toxicity into women I was with,
right?
That it then affected,
right?
And so it's therein lies some of the danger of some of this stuff, is a kind of unexpressed frustration or being able to deal with stuff. But because like now I sort of see, like I'm really glad I have the brothers I have, because I've got my brother Brian, who is a great orator, successful lawyer and very cerebral, and supports the shit out of his wife. And then I've got my brother Sean, who you guys have heard from me on the podcast, who is just like, if there was like a warrior in like the fucking 15th century or something like that, or it would be him. But he shows very few of the qualities my brother Brian has, and my brother Tony is sort of like, kind of a mix. So I've got these great examples of what I think of as manliness, and they all kind of complement each other. And so I kind of look at, like, I don't know, like being a man is, I think it starts with not being ashamed of what you've done, I guess, up to now. Yeah. I think it starts with a lack of shame. I kind of think being a man's having a list of dudes you'd fuck if you ever went gay. Like, there's, who knows?
Wait, that you'd enjoy, or just like your first pick? Like, if I gotta do this,
I don't know. It's got to have Chris Hemsworth and Brad Pitt on it.
Really?
But
no. What if that's not your type?
But anyway, like things like that.
What if you like brunettes?
Being not ashamed of saying something like that. Just like it's gonna, and Traver goes into it. It's those choices you make. I guess toxic or not, you own them.
Okay, so this is, I may have shown a little bit more inflection in my voice than I normally do when that topic comes along, especially toxic masculinity. And the reason I have an issue with that is that right now you have a bunch of little boys growing up with the idea that being masculine is toxic, and that bothers me.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And it's like, you know, all the things like, all right, so you grew up with brothers. Mm-hmm. Did you wrestle?
Yeah.
Did they whoop your ass?
Yes.
And what did you learn from that? You got stronger. You learned to.
I became.
Learn to pick yourself up.
But there was two sides to that though, because I got strong. Cause there was, and it was.
Was it to get them back?
You know, it was my father too. It was that I need to build a suit of armor, which came in the form of being, 300 pounds of rock solid muscle that nothing could fucking hurt me. And so it can take, that's the thing. It can take, and you can't control, like when you present, somebody, a child or anybody with this stuff, like, an ass whooping or something like this, or you can never tell how the circuitry in their brain is going to decipher what that means. Like, does this mean I'm weak? Does this mean I'm not? And I think this is where a lot of this comes to that, is people are saying, out of all the messages that can be interpreted in a child's brain, it sort of boils down to this kind of all-encompassing, I'm not man enough.
Well, what gets me about the whole thing is that, as a boy growing up, you get beat up, you lose the wrestling. They tell you to toughen up. Yeah. Toughen up, get stronger. Not, rust them down, you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And then as you got older and became a man, you're expected to be able to deal with certain situations as a man. Mm-hmm. Boys today are being told, no, you can't do that. You need to be more sensitive and stop that, And when they become older, they're going to be put in the same situation that we are today. It's like, you need to be able to deal with this situation that is too much for you now because we have emasculated you because we told you it was toxic.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said about that. I think a lot of it boils down to an inability, a conflict resolution inability, because there's sort of an inherent sense of guilt for being a man,
right?
And
that was the whole thing I was getting behind as far as the whole uncivilized versus civilized. Mm-hmm. Like, if you decide to go the civilized way, you're gonna decide to just give in with what.
Yeah, if you pander to people, you'll be a pandering spineless jellyfish.
And if you decide to go the uncivilized way, get ready for some nasty comments in your Instagram. Mm-hmm. And since I don't have an Instagram, I'm not worried about it.
Mm-hmm. But I think in my interpretation of the uncivilized man, you're like, yeah, this is how I am. Why does that make you uncomfortable? And let's start a dialogue about that. And if I don't change your mind, that's fucking fine.
See, and that's the thing, like
the whole point is to cause no harm.
Yeah, and that was the thing,
sort of like the libertarian.
And that's the
way
thing.
Of living.
Right. That's the difference between you and I, because you're willing to have that conversation. It's like, at the end of the day, I'm not really willing to. I don't have to justify it.
And that's the thing.
I'll have it, but I don't have to justify it.
And that's the thing too, Chris. Like, I'm not. I don't have that conversation a lot of the time, but I guarantee you, at some point after that opportunity was missed to have that conversation, I think about it and I'm like, man, that was an opportunity right there to fucking build a bridge. And you missed it.
And that's why we're friends, Heath. Because,
yes.
Because my lack of fucks given, you make up for with your fucks given.
But and then like I'll mean to like reach back out to him, and sometimes I remember and sometimes I don't. And anyway, I mean maybe this is a good place to break.
Do I get to talk?
Oh, sorry. Fuck. Jesus Christ, dude.
We're gonna take a quick break. After I talk real quick, and then so I looked it up because fuck, I don't know.
because we were talking so much.
Yeah, I had plenty of time. Masculinity, as defined by Google, which often manipulates their definitions based on pop culture, just so you all know. Webster's is a better source, especially an old one. Masculinity qualities or attributes regarded as characteristic of men. So I didn't know what was characteristic of men, so I looked it up.
Wow, that's not vague at all.
So I found an article on Wikipedia, which also, well, I don't know. They're usually right. Fuck it.
It's funny, like when I was going to college, Wikipedia, like you could not use them as a source.
Dude, I had one teacher in all of my college experiences across the 4 or 5 colleges I went to who said, he's like, yeah, people say Wikipedia can be wrong, and it's true, but find a time. Mm-hmm. Like, give me a source. Like, show me one time where Wikipedia was totally wrong. And it's like,
because if it's wrong, someone else has come back and corrected.
Yeah, exactly. But anyhow, so here's Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. Traits of masculinity in Western society include strength, courage, independence, violence, and assertiveness. Traits also include protectiveness, competitiveness, aggressiveness, assertiveness, sexual appetite, deference to truth over feelings, passion, confidence, and independence. And if you think you can't take any one of those and make it toxic by going too far with it, I think you're crazy.
Mm-hmm. The only one I would question is violence. That masculinity is associated with violence.
Yeah, but
would you associate violence?
Okay,
well,
true.
So now
true, but all right. So it's the story with violence, and that could be very toxic. But someone break into your house as the man, if your family's in the back room. And you're the one in between the intruder and your family, and you decide, well, fuck it, I'm going to jump out this window here. It'll keep me safe.
Yeah, but that's situational violence.
Yeah,
because that definition in Wikipedia sort of insinuates being a violent individual.
Well, so here's the thing. Here's all I'm saying. We're talking. Remember what we're talking about. We're talking about can masculinity possibly be toxic? He said, Traver Boehm says it can't be. Mm-hmm. I disagree. No, you take any trait of masculinity. You can take
anything and make it toxic. That's what I'm saying, though.
That's what I'm saying. Now, do I also agree that toxic masculinity is an overused term, and as King is saying, is completely destroying a whole generation of young men who are going to grow up and be completely ill-prepared to handle what a very normal life in this country will throw at you? Also true. Yes. But to say masculinity isn't toxic is insane. Unless you're going to say femininity is also not ever toxic, which is equally insane. You can take anything. You can take vitamin C and make it toxic.
Right.
You can take water and make it toxic. If you have too much of anything in your life, it will be toxic. Balance is very important. You can go too far with even you take the best protectiveness.
Mm-hmm. I just don't.
At first glance, you think protectiveness.
I just don't like the whole toxic masculinity.
I also don't like it, and he doesn't like it. And I totally agree with that. Toxic masculinity is an overused term.
Yeah.
And often
the problem is if you can make anything toxic, then anything can be toxic. So masculinity, that's what he's saying. Masculinity within itself is not toxic.
Here's what I'm saying.
Can it be? Yes.
So, and if that's what he's saying, he didn't say that.
But there are people there are people who out there that
because we don't want to put words in people's mouths.
No, so not his. Okay, but there are people out there who believe that masculinity that it's not masculinity or toxic masculinity, that masculinity within itself is toxic.
Yes, and I think we all agree that we're not arguing about that because we all agree that that's bullshit. Mm-hmm. There is masculinity that is not toxic. But I mean, you look at the list, like protectiveness, the most on that list, probably the most innocent of every term. You can be overprotective. Abso-fucking-lutely. We've all seen the boyfriend, we've all seen the parent, and we look at him and go,
"Oh yeah, I've been in fights with the boyfriend."
We're on.
No, I've been in fights with the boyfriend that's overprotected. But
I think, guys, we're teetering on some territory where we're running into some confirmation bias. We're seeing some things and we're being like, oh, that could easily be construed as this. That could easily be construed as this, which honestly is true.
Isn't that anything, though? That's the problem.
I know, but if we take that stance, that could be anything, then nothing will ever be addressed in anything. And I'm not just talking about toxic masculinity.
No, but
I'm talking about any topic.
No, I agree with you 100%. But again, within the confines of this conversation, you and me, I mean, you are a very hopeful person, but do you think anything is going to actually be addressed?
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, okay.
Well, I think over time, maybe not directly, but I think things change.
We're still arguing. Okay, never mind.
Okay, so let's. Maybe this is if in my mind this makes sense. Our ways of thinking in everything have evolved just as humans have, and that's assuming you believe in evolution or adaptation. The ways of thinking and processing information changes and is fluid. There goes the
evangelical community.
So, just as that, it's odd that we hold on to certain ways of thinking that we won't evolve with as well, but other ways of thinking we will, and we know physiologically things move that way. But certain ways of thinking we'll hold on to, and we'll be like, no, this is the fucking hill I'm going to die on.
Yeah,
we
I want you
make
to be
connections to that. You know, this is this is a war against men. This is the war against civil liberties or something. And
I want you to be right.
You can compromise and change some of the ways you're thinking without compromising your quote manhood, or I think who you are. I really think it boils down to just kind of sitting and being like, okay, can I be better at this?
I agree. Do you think? I guess here's. So from what he wrote, which I disagree with and agree with depending on, do you think the term toxic masculinity is overused in order to manipulate a generation into being less masculine than they could be and still be healthy?
100% I do. It needs to be, the terms need to be redefined.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we can agree on that.
Oh,
okay.
sweet.
Break
let's drink. Welcome back. Go ahead. I've never gotten to do this before.
So guys, as we ended up in, we kind of how this is playing out, we gotta.
This is bringing
up a lot of good stuff, and I guess that's I'm gonna make the assumption to connect that that was probably Traver's plan.
Sure.
To get sort of maybe conversations like this started.
This is really why the whole podcast was started in the first place, because we used to have these conversations all the time.
Yeah, and it is, and that's a good point.
Just that we didn't record them, so that way we could never run for political office.
Yeah.
But now that they're recorded, the option of running for office is gone, and my life has become so much simpler.
So as we kind of like reiterate to kind of just recap some of the stuff we've been talking about toxic masculinity. Sort of, and the kind of conclusion we came to was sort of there needs to be a redefinition. We need to define our terms when we're talking about something, because something, and we're still kind of undecided on whether masculinity, not if it is toxic, but if it can be toxic. Is that correct? Is that kind of where we landed?
No,
I don't think.
I think we've decided.
I think we've established
it can be toxic.
Okay.
Masculinity is not.
But masculinity is not toxic.
But anything.
There can be toxic aspects about it.
I have a definition of toxic masculinity.
Oh,
okay.
Which is what no one can define, but Wikipedia has.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'm not on board. Toxic masculinity is thus defined by adherence to traditional male gender roles that consequently stigmatize and limit the emotions boys and men may comfortably express while satisfying other emotions, such as anger.
What?
I don't know.
Wait, hold. Oh, we missed the Southern Refreshment.
No, you probably. Oh no, it's still there. I can see it.
What?
It basically says like toxic masculinity. Well, I don't know. Maybe
it sounded like the thing I was arguing about before.
I'm not.
It sounds like masculinity.
Well,
not being able to show fear or emotions. Am I?
No, so here's the I guess here's the thing. I agree that definition is what it is used as today.
Okay.
I disagree that that's what toxic masculinity means, and I also disagree that it's necessarily a bad thing, because at some point you need you have to fill a role in society, and
You know what my favorite thing about toxic masculinity is? My favorite thing about it is that criminals are told about, that's when they talk about them. They're toxic masculine criminals, rapists, people who do bad stuff to women, kids, stuff like that. Then we hear about toxic. It's like, no, this dude wasn't a toxic. He was a criminal, okay? Harvey Weinstein, he was a criminal.
Right.
He broke the law. They talk about all these people. No. Let's not put them in this other box where it's toxic to be a man. Let's put them in this box where what they did was wrong, and now they're a criminal.
Right, but Traver draws that connection to that.
Yeah,
that's where unexpressed emotion leads to.
Where it can lead to, not always.
It never leads to anything healthy.
All right, so there's a chapter in the book, not to get off the toxic, but it was like, are you afraid to be part of the Me Too movement? At one point.
Yeah, well, I think it was how not to get Me Too'd.
Or are you, like I went on a date with someone and it was like, I was kind of raised at the idea of what a gentleman was back in the day. So, open doors, stuff like this. And at the end of the day, maybe a hug, depending on, you follow the lead, right? Whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I realized at this point, I am afraid to be Me Too'd. Mm-hmm. Because at any point, chivalry can be turned into chauvinism. Just like that. And there's nothing we can do about it. It can really happen just that fast, Mm-hmm. So it's like, I've not done things on dates that's been misconstrued as not an entrance. And then I was like, no, I was interested. I was afraid to do shit.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm just, you can't leave. I'm talking specifically to you.
If you hear a vacuum cleaner in the background, it is definitely not my wife vacuuming, because that would be toxic.
Just as we kind of on our last segment discussed how anything could be construed as toxic, anything you did on a date and any interaction you do with somebody could be misconstrued as something.
Well, no, even more so, it seems to be going.
So at a certain point, you need to act, and if you act, maybe take action, but so you take responsibility for the consequences that might come of your actions.
Okay, but you start thinking more about your actions more so than, because open the door, touch the small of somebody's back as they go through the door. That has never been I've never thought about not doing that before. That's never been an issue. It's like you open the door. That's what you do. You open the door. You're not guiding them. It's just kind of an assurance. Is like, okay, I'm here. I'm behind you type deal.
It's an excuse to touch them.
That's how. But true.
It's kind of like on Seinfeld, the stop short.
Yeah. Whoa.
You never heard of the stop short?
No.
It's like you unnecessarily pump the brakes so you can reach across and
touch the boobs.
Put your hand on their chest.
No, that wasn't really.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, that's a classic Seinfeld movie.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I used to use it all the time.
I like
no shit.
Yeah.
I like
how does that
you
work?
Say
if
that
you
to
didn't...
me like I watched Seinfeld. That's cute.
I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, that's cute. Sometimes Evans forgets, but it's okay. But no, I mean,
it's all the drugs.
But it's stuff like that. It's like I don't. It's sad because I don't initiate things like hugs anymore. Like I wait for the cue that is like, okay, I can.
Are you really? Are you? Well,
I do that kind of too. But
do you
go and finish your thought.
Yes,
I'm not allowed to have thoughts on this. I'm married, so she doesn't have to Me Too me. She can just leave me, which is way easier and more profitable.
Way more expensive. Yeah.
But yes, yes, that is the thing I worry about. Yes, especially depending on.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you this and I was.
I don't blame you.
I was deep in thought about this last night. Oddly.
Are you worried about someone?
No, I don't know, because as you know, it's like I've been really vocal about. It's been a long time since I've had sex, and Like, and a lot of people, we joke about it a lot. Like, it's been, like, it's part of, like, it's sort of voluntary. It's mostly involuntary, but
I feel your pain.
Yeah, I just haven't been laying in a long fucking time.
I feel your pain. Let's move on.
That's why I hang out with you two.
Like, we're talking about years, and I'm not sure if that is like if I'm afraid.
Are you
Are
you allowed to make the first move? Is that something that goes through your mind?
No, it's not. I've taken it deeper than that. I think that in a lot of things Traver brings up, I'm confirming something that I'm already comfortable with, and I'm throwing the guise of being afraid to make the first move when it's really I'm afraid of intimacy.
Ooh.
And I think me personally, that's where I've gone, and that's a whole new episode. But
I'm just afraid to make the first move.
Yeah, and that's probably me just sitting and meditating on it for far too long.
It's not it's not that part. It's just I'm afraid to kiss someone when they weren't wanting to be kissed, and it's like, oh shit.
Okay, and that can be taken down to like, you roll the dice. Like, but if I try to kiss her, she's probably not going to accuse me of rape.
But back in the day, back in the day,
is that a weird thing to say?
No, in high school.
All right,
in high school, you tried to kiss someone, and they'd be like, "Oh, get out of here with that."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Okay, I'll take that L." But now you're worried that you take that L, is it going to turn into something more?
Fuck, you're worried that you're going to kiss them, go have sex with them, and then you'll be in jail later for rape, because that's fucking happened.
Yeah.
They make documentaries about that shit.
Because they weren't, or they really didn't want it, but that's the way they felt it was going.
And, I don't those are why. I'm just saying
but
sometimes.
Those are really isolated incidents.
Yeah, they're isolated, but still, it's at the same time, I have messed up possible and this isn't even a joke, possible relationships because of a fear of that. And it's not a fear of intimacy. It was just a fear of not even rejection, just a fear of them taking my actions the wrong way. And that was like something I picked up on in the book. It's like, I was afraid to kiss this girl because I thought she would take it in the wrong way if she didn't want me to kiss her.
I think a lot of me just kind of forgot how. Like, I was with so many
people,
sexually aggressive women, that like I never had to initiate anything.
Well, I don't know if you've seen yourself, Heath.
That must be nice. I look good and I got muscles.
No, I'm talking about like not just like randoms. I'm talking about like the women I was in relationships with.
Only thing I'm missing is a beard because I can't have one at work.
Okay, so I want to go back to your point about the isolated incidences, because yes, no one can argue that shit doesn't happen. Yes, it is super isolated, but the problem is we see those isolated incidences. No, my fingers are on camera, and then we see the entirety of the Me Too movement where guys are going down for crazy shit, and you're like, God, that seemed like kind of unsubstantiated, but okay.
But some of those,
and they hate, but things start to incrementally become a little easier to justify making those accusations.
It gives us, it gives like dudes, I think that bias, was that confirmation bias, or what's the bias? We talked about it earlier with kidnappings and shit. Like, it's not common, but since you see it, your mind is like, oh shit, that'll happen to me. It probably won't.
You know what?
But you saw it once on the news, and you watched the documentary,
and it is,
and
because
you're like, holy fuck, you're probably in no danger.
It's like I'm not comparing myself to anybody like Weinstein, because first of all,
you're not rich enough.
Thank you. Like, let's be honest, that dude. Come on, did you see his pictures?
I'm gonna say the most
No, did you see
most manly, confident thing I've said all day? You're way more attractive. Than Harvey Weinstein.
I was about to say, did you see that dude's picture? Come on, Weinstein's
the ones
ugly.
about his mouth penis.
Well, Christ, I mean, he's
like, Weinstein's ugly. He's not getting all those beautiful women because
he ain't that rich.
He's conveniently become more decrepit and ugly since he's gotten accused.
Accused, arrested. He is done. But no, it's like I'm not worried about that. It's more so just the idea. You know what? It's not even. I think it's more so my name, because I grew up believing a few things in life, and one of those things is your name is you.
I'm really with you right now.
And it's like I am.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
Your name
I am
drugged
me.
through
this
mud.
is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the people. This is how you know me.
Mm-hmm.
This is my name, and my name's not besmirched here, there, whatever. You know me. You know my name.
You don't want a real Kavanaugh situation where people are going to be like Kavanaugh 20 years from now, and they're like, "Oh, the guy that got put on trial."
And I'm 100% with you. That's specifically why I don't go out in this town and don't date frequently, because I don't. If I do meet somebody I really like, I don't want them to know, like, well, it's fucking so and so and so and so and so and so, thought this and this. Yeah. And let's figure shit out together.
It's like a man doesn't have much in this life other than their name. Mm-hmm. And so, like, to drag somebody's name through, like, Weinstein, his name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like he has his name on not just like property, is as far as Universal and shit like that.
Miramax, the whole fucking
Exactly. It's like, I'm not that big, but when you hear my name, I want you to remember me as someone that was a decent human being, not,
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes grumpy, but overall decent. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm always grumpy, not sometimes. Let's get it right.
Chris, we were making fun of you and you didn't fucking get it.
Oh, no, I got it. But
you corrected me. As grumpy people would do.
Damn it.
Once
again, I'm the idiot in the room.
This is who I am. And the fact that you two still love me for it is one of the biggest reasons why I respect you and I stick around.
But it's been a really cool thing. I mean, and but a lot of times, like, shit like that can catch you off guard. Like, where you think things are good and copacetic, and they're not. And this is kind of what leads me to that event in college I was going to tell about. But what I don't want you to lose your train of thought.
No, go ahead.
No,
I was going to give you an example of what I was talking about, but please go ahead.
We want to hear about your college life.
This is so when I was going to college, I was a musical theater major and starting offensive tackle on the football team, and so I'd go back and forth between departments, and it was an odd dynamic. A lot of times I'd walk through the beginning of the locker room, had this big long hall, and there were all these couches set up where players would just lounge before practice or whatever. And I'd walk by that all times, and every day on at least one or two people would mutter fag or something like that to me when I walk by. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And
that's because of your major.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'd go over to the theater department, and we were doing this. It was a one-act festival that was going on, and the partner I had was a very good actress, but very very timid, and I don't know any better words. So I'm just gonna I don't want to have negative connotations, but I guess maybe kind of meek, kind of quiet. I know meek's not a great word.
Yeah, but nobody knows what it means animent so
I was about to say, okay. We're old, Heath.
We know what that means, but
so I was carrying a particular amount of frustration, but I sort of unconsciously, and in our rehearsals, there was a lot going on. Like I said, we were in the midst of a spring football, a lot of practices. I was doing another production in a smaller town outside of town on a regular basis, and then rehearsing for this one. And we get together, and I didn't pick up on it that I was subconsciously becoming like short and kind of domineering.
Right.
During the rehearsals, and the lack of situational awareness of that, I was doing that with somebody who that could have intimidated and would be afraid to speak up to my face for because if I'm doing that to her, then it wouldn't be a stretch to say that, you know, when things go in her ear or through her eyes, what she's taking in, when it filters through her brain, that's who I am. And so I didn't pick up on that. And I was going through Maureen, what's her last name? She was my, it was one of the upper division theater classes, pulls me in her office to do an evaluation. She sits me down and she lays all this on me, that I'm intimidating people, I'm, you know, domineering, I'm controlling, and how basically being toxically masculine. And this is obvious. And at that time, I'm kind of like thinking like, well, this is just what, like, I'm just being myself. And it kind of took like, and I got furious, like in her office. I did everything to fuel the accusation, you know? And granted, you know, taking everything into consideration, I was sleep deprived, depleted, fucking, like I said, doing 2 different productions, doing fucking spring football. Like I didn't full load of classes in college. Like I don't know if you could throw more on the plate, but I just I went off. And I stood up and I fucking yelled at her and fucking stormed out of the office, slammed the shit out of the door to where I probably knocked some shit off the walls in her fucking office. And just like completely, like I felt like a trap was laid for me, and just like a fucking moron, I leaped into it, you know? And but it's because it caught me really off guard. Like because I didn't pick up on like the visual cues or the body language or things like that I have no doubt that this actress was showing me, but I was just fucking oblivious because it was me. I was just worried, you know, I was just thinking about me. How can we get the best product done and, you know, get this fucking done, you know, whatever, in the quickest, most efficient fashion. And, but yeah, it can sneak up on you when you don't think, when you're not consciously aware, you know?
That's very true.
So that was my first experience into that. And it made me, I was angry about it for years, a long time. I was like, how the fuck, you know, could they say that about me? And now I'm like at the age I am now and kind of going through the sort of, I don't know, the 3rd or 4th renaissance, you know, of my life. I'm like, yeah, fuck, there's, you know, man, there's probably a lot of stuff if you would have just taken a deep breath and fucking taken a step back, but which is easier said than done. And we don't have someone tapping us on the shoulder all throughout life, like a coach following us around. Like, hey, motherfucker, you know, pull your head out of your ass for 2 seconds. It's going to save you a lot of grief, you know, for the next like 3 years or something. But anyway, so that was just an experience I wanted to share.
I'll tell you my story after we go off air.
Okay.
I'll tell you mine. Yeah, definitely.
All right. I had another thought too, but I lost it. But
I saw it run off.
Yeah,
right out the door.
It was very small.
It was
meek, if you will, to keep using that word.
It did look important though.
You guys want to call this an episode, or
I think we have to. It's not that I want to.
Okay.
If we weren't on air, we could just keep talking for another 4 hours.
Don't worry, when we come back, we will not be talking about toxic masculinity.
Yeah, guys, we're gonna move on. This is just one episode. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff in this book, and a lot of it, and there's some funny shit in it. And I know this was kind of a heavy segment, but a good conversation piece. Obviously, you know, it's sparked some good debate and some emotion, and which is good. That's why these conversations if you take anything from this, that's why these conversations need to be had. And that plays into a lot of the stuff that Traver talks about, is when you live this life of comfort and you're afraid of getting into a conversation that is uneasy or uncomfortable, that will lead you down a path to a fucking miserable life. And so have these tough conversations, have those tough interactions, be brave enough to have a conversation that matters. And I'm not saying we're fucking brave or heroes, but we're trying to be.
Just reminded me of an Office meme. And I don't know. That's all I got, man.
So, anyways, thank you. Chris, do you have anything?
No.
Luke?
Oh, I appreciate all our listeners. Super fun episode, good conversation, and we will continue on a different topic next time, I'm sure. Oh, I've sparked King's interest. Go ahead.
I lied. The last time we were on, I thanked all the healthcare workers and out there, all the people out there, keeping us safe and working hard during all this time. I wanted to add on to that. I want to thank all the people still working in restaurants, all the cashiers, all the people still stocking shelves, making sure we have everything that we need. Not enough people are thanking them, and they're dealing with this just as much as anyone else. So
I'm glad you brought that up. I was listening to a radio show on the way home from picking up some takeout last night, and it's a nationally syndicated show on ESPN, and it was really cool because it's a big show that's got a massive fucking viewership, on that app. It's like one of their podcasts, and they started making this whole entire segment. I'm so glad you brought that up because I meant to do that similar thing, dedicated to long haul truckers. And where they'll open up the phone lines just so fucking guys fucking hauling shit like cross country can fucking call in, and it's live, and they'll just fucking talk to him. They'll be like, some dude, like, he's like, yeah, I'm hauling, fucking Alpo dog food, up to New York City. I'm out of like Tuscaloosa, Alabama right now, it's just, and it was really cool. They'll talk about like their favorite sports memories or something.
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
It's a whole segment dedicated to long haul truckers. Cause like they're, people bitch about no toilet paper or anything like that. Like there'll be no nothing if those guys stop.
Exactly.
Dude.
And the people still working in Walmart and Target that'll bring your stuff out to your car, and the people still serving up food and packaging it and bringing it out to you. It's like, to those people, they, first of all, in my opinion, they're not getting paid enough.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
not
say
even close.
Pay them fucking more.
And they're definitely not getting enough things. So to them, thank you for everything you're doing, keeping us going through these times.
That's an amazing thing to bring up, Chris. And like I said, I'm super glad you did, because I totally forgot. That's fuck yeah.
That's all we got, folks.
All right.